A wise man once said that no country is given to a people on a silver platter. The people of Bougainville, who are gearing up to declare their independence from Papua New Guinea by the year 2027, would undoubtedly share that sentiment. The first Bougainville independence movement arose in the late 1960s when local landowners began expressing their opposition to the then Australian colonial government's policy in regard to the Panguna copper mine. The discovery of massive copper resources in the centre of Bougainville Island had led to the development of the mine by Bougainville Copper Limited, a subsidiary of Rio Tinto, today the world's second largest mining company. The landowners were already generally suspicious of outsiders due to a succession of European, Japanese, Australian and Papua New Guinean involvement since colonisation. Moreover, they felt that their permission had not been sought, that the royalties offered to them, which amounted to around 1% of the value of production, were not sufficient, and that the mine would cause environmental damage. However, the Australian government's position was clear. It wanted the mine to underwrite the economy of Papua New Guinea, to which it was to grant full independence in 1975. Panguna certainly achieved the goals the authorities had set for it, at one point holding the title of the world's largest open-pit copper mine and contributing 12% of Papua New Guinea's GDP and 45% of its exports. Papua New Guinea was given a 20% minority share in the operation, but the local landowners kept up their opposition to the mine and began to direct their grievances at the new Papua New Guinea government, at the people from the main island of Papua New Guinea who had been brought in to work at the mine, and at the mine operator itself. Gathering under the banner of the secessionist Bougainville Revolutionary Army, or BRA, they carried out acts of sabotage that eventually forced Panguna to shut down in 1989 and then triggered a decade-long civil war, with the BRA, backed by the government of the neighbouring Solomon Islands, on one side, and the PNG government and some allies from Bougainville on the other. All up, the war took the lives of up to 20,000 civilians and 2,000 combatants, and displaced around 1/5 of Bougainville Island's 200,000 inhabitants. The two sides eventually agreed to a ceasefire in 1998, and 3 years later, they signed a peace agreement which led to the creation of an autonomous Bougainville government and a commitment by the PNG to allow a non-binding referendum on the territory's political status to be held no later than 2020. The referendum took place in November and December 2019, just in time to comply with the terms of the agreement, with more than 98% of Bougainville's 181,000 voters choosing independence and fewer than 2% choosing the other option, which was greater autonomy. Although the government of Papua New Guinea isn't obligated to accept the result of the referendum, it was non-binding after all. The fact that such an overwhelming majority of Bougainvillians voted for independence has boosted the chance for a peaceful transition. But when it does achieve independence, the government of Bougainville will have a bigger problem to contend with. And that is how to ensure that a fledgling country with a population of only around 250,000 people, which is desperately poor and which still bears the marks of the Civil War, the capital was even moved to the adjoining island of Buka because the largest town and former capital, Arawa, was destroyed, can actually survive, let alone thrive, as an independent state. And while there is no single cure for these problems, the most obvious solution can be found at, you guessed it, Panguna. That's right, the same copper mine which underwrote Papua New Guinea's independence and which was later the trigger for a brutal civil war which ravaged Bougainville, could now help to underwrite Bougainville's independence and perhaps even help it prosper. And don't just take my word for it. Raymond Masono, the former Bougainville Vice President and Mining Minister, expressed the same view in 2019, telling Reuters that Panguna is the most likely project that can bankroll Bougainville's independence from Papua New Guinea. Rio Tinto walked away from the mine in 2016, transferring its shareholding to the autonomous Bougainville government and the Papua New Guinea government for free, although it left behind allegations of environmental and human rights violations that will be addressed by a recently established committee comprising of government representatives from Bougainville and Papua New Guinea, local landowners, community leaders, the Australian-based Human Rights Law Centre, and representatives of Rio Tinto and Bougainville Copper Limited. The divestment of Panguna by Rio Tinto gave both the Bougainville and Papua New Guinea governments an equal share of 36.4% each in Panguna, with the remaining shares traded on the Australian Stock Exchange or held by local landowners. However, changes proposed by the autonomous Bougainville government could see it take a 60% share in Panguna and all mining projects in the country, leaving a 40% share that foreign investors, who would bring in much needed capital and technical expertise, can bid for. If these changes do go through, and that's a big if, because it would require the government of Papua New Guinea to quietly relinquish its rights to Panguna, then the bidding process is sure to attract plenty of interest. Mines, of course, are not renewable resources. Once you extract a ton of copper from the ground, that's one less ton of copper that you can mine and sell in future. But fortunately, for the soon-to-be independent Bougainville, operations at Panguna never restarted following the outbreak of the Civil War, which means the remaining resources were left in the ground, and those resources amount to an estimated 5.3 million tonnes of contained copper metal, worth around $47 billion applying current copper prices, in addition to some gold, which would add further to its value. Those numbers, it should be said, refer to the mineral resource, as in the total amount of copper estimated to be contained in the deposit, and not the reserve, which is the economically viable portion and which still needs to be determined. So the actual value is probably a fair bit less than $47 billion, but however much it is, it will still amount to a lot for a newly independent country that desperately needs it. With this in mind, Bougainville's looming independence may actually have come at a fortuitous time. Had it come at the time of the peace agreement in 2001, when copper prices were fairly low, then it might not have been enough to bankroll the new country. But right now, copper is facing a potentially substantial supply gap due to its status as a critical ingredient in a whole range of technologies associated with the global green energy transition, such as electric vehicles, electricity grid expansion, renewable power generation, and battery storage. As I noted in a recent video on copper mining in Chile, the International Energy Agency has predicted that up to 50 million tonnes per year of new copper supply, or almost 10 times the total amount that Panguna is estimated to contain, will be needed to meet possible demand from the EV and renewable energy sectors between now and 2030, and this deficit could blow out even further by 2040. The supply deficit could be bridged to some extent by expanding existing mines, but it will also require the development of many new mines around the world, or, in the case of Panguna, the resumption of mining after more than 30 years of inactivity. All of this is to say that while Bougainville may not have been given its independence on a silver platter, it should be able to finance its new country on a platter made of valuable copper. I'm Nadav for Mining the World. Before you go, if you feel like you got something of value from this video, then I'd really appreciate if you would hit the subscribe button. And, as always, wherever you are in this mineral-rich world of ours, thank you.